I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be around for now. So if you can do it.
No, so I haven't
Not with my
prepared
presence.
anything, but depending on how it goes the session today, I can prepare, uh, depending on the interest of the people, some PDF with the basic information of incorporating companies in different countries. Let's see how is the focus, because otherwise it gets way too long as a session with way too many countries. So we can base on that, on the roadmap to incorporate in all of that. Uh, so first, hello everyone. My name is Luisa. I'm originally a Portuguese and Brazilian lawyer, but I have been working with international law for a couple of years now, and with Web3 for just as much time as I'm a lawyer. So I have been working with what we now call Web3 since 2017. Before that, I was working with corporate law and contracts, international corporate, international contracts. So I just pretty much started focusing on tech and startups, and after to crypto and Web3. Nowadays, I would say that at least 90% of my clients, they are somewhat related to Web3 or crypto, and different scopes, different kinds of company. So I have my own law firm in Portugal, and in my law firm here in Portugal, we deal with corporate and crypto, tax, immigration, real estate, all of it. So in different departments, especially, and then the Web3 clients that deal with the other parts other than corporation. They're pretty much people that want to move to Europe or have a better tax planning if they're trying to move to Portugal. And I'm also a consultant and the head of legal of a company called QB. What QB does is it helps founders, shareholders to incorporate Web3 companies worldwide, meaning different kind of companies have different kinds of needs. Therefore, it sometimes need to be divided in more than one company. And these companies not always are in the same country. So it really depends on the goal of that company. So if we're going to issue tokens, if we're going to have IPs, where is the IP, if it's open source or not, sometimes will make sense to have a holding company, a development, and an SPV, sometimes just a holding and a development, and then different countries according to the different needs. So they we help the founders to first understand which is the best country for them to incorporate, the pros and cons, costs, time of incorporation. We help them with the whole incorporation process with local partners, also with better pricing, and give them the structure and then help them incorporate. So it's a two-stage. The first is the intelligence
Should I put
stage
like
and
some
then the
crystals here?
incorporation itself. So that's pretty much my day today. And yeah, been working with over 32 jurisdictions, which is pretty good because then we have a global notion of what's going on Web3, different regulations, and also how to incorporate in different countries. So based on that, um, I thought about giving you guys a bit of uh, overview or what's the roadmap that we normally go through to choose a country to incorporate the companies. What's the main criteria? And then we can start having questions and actually interacting. So I can try to target better the group instead of just talking legal terms. Okay. So, first step, once you're trying to incorporate a company or thinking about incorporating a company or a structure, is to have in mind that this should be, if you're in a pre-seed stage, an important step for you actually even sometimes to modulate your product. Because since different countries have different regulations, sometimes it would make sense to adapt your product depending on where you want to
I think
act
we
or if
watched
you
that
want a
already.
global scale
Yes, we did.
to that country jurisdiction, or at least choose the jurisdiction based on what criteria you already have. Important questions that we always have to ask is what's the if you're going to issue a token? The answer is yes. We need to understand if the token is a utility, security, payment, NFT, or even DeFi or estate-backed kind of token. Why is this important? Especially because of securities law. The first thing we need to make sure is if future project will be considered security or not. And then the second point is if there is any specific regulation in, or in what countries do it need a specific regulation for those tokens. So, and token wise, it's also, we need to understand what's the risk appetite of each of the clients. Why is that? First, to understand the niveau of exposure that they want to have. And second, to also understand if they would prefer a country that does not have any regulation or countries that are already more regulated. So a bit of legal security on that. Token-wise, is also important to understand if the product aim to create a stable coin. I already have a couple of clients like that. That restricts a lot and change a lot your product. Once we're talking then, second point is gaming. So if your product is related to games, we need to understand if it's a chance game or a skill game. Or even if it's a skill game with some chance features. If it's a skill game that might have a staking inside, we have some games that go towards a metaverse and can have some staking. That's really important to understand. If they have any chance feature, we have to analyze gambling laws in each one of the countries to understand if a gambling license will be needed on top of a crypto license or just a gambling license or neither of them. So that's the next point. Art NFT also have a specific regulation, so it's important to know if games or even if you're going to have tokens related to NFT art. Then once we already passed this first project part, let's say a bit more technical, we need to then understand the needs of the clients. So if, for example, if you want a company that's more private to the founders or less private, if you are aiming to a country with that don't have personal tax, information tax, digital asset tax, corporation tax, or if you want to be taxed and have a more security on the legal side of it, so this kind of modulation. If have VAT or not, this sometimes can be something that might kill a project, so we have to have that in mind. If they have VASP legislation, if they have digital license, digital asset license, if they have or do not have CFC rules, if any of the founders or shareholders are American, to see if they have a compensation method tax-wise, that sometimes can be important. KYC and AML procedures, those different between countries, but now Web3, pretty much all of the countries have some kind of KYC and AML. If they have FATCA, and then once we reach all of that, we see the specific types of corporation that's good for each country. So foundations, associations, DAOs, trusts, funds, or just normal LLC. And after that, the next step is to see the cost itself. So if you need a representative on site, if you have a staffed raise legislation, a safe raise legislation, if it's good for crowdfunding, and based on that, we'll then internally see what countries are good for holdings, SPVs, and development. But have in mind that's always case by case. There is not a one size fits all once we are talking about incorporation. So that's a bit of an overview, and then I think that would be good if you guys have any specific questions or use cases, because then we could adapt this for your specific needs.
All right, guys, so you can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Am I pronouncing your name okay, Lisa?
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Aileen here. And I'm actually based in Dublin, Ireland. We've already registered a company that's based here in Ireland, and one of our first kind of platform products, um, we've established that, but our kind of the next product, which is Acid House, is kind of born out of the original product, if you know what I mean. Because it's more a Web3 play, would you suggest setting up a new company for this specifically? Or would you allow it to just evolve out of the original company? It's something that we've been really asking ourselves, considering there are there is kind of vast regulations here in Ireland. They haven't been fully determined yet. We intend to be global with how we're enabling Web3 on our system. Anyway, that's kind of the first part of the question, but
What's exactly your so once you say, okay, we want to expand for Web3 and more global, what aspects of Web3 were you trying to exploit on that?
Yeah, so on our system, we have a creative asset management system, and what that does, that enables brands and 3D creators to work together on digital workflows. So that's kind of really perpetuating the use of digital assets, whether it's for metaverse or Web 2.5, whatever the case may be. But within the system, we have an activation where some of those assets may potentially be imbued with with blockchain, whether it's an NFC and then it graduates up to an NFT, whatever the case may be. We don't necessarily want to warehouse sort of Web3 assets, if you know what I mean. Once they're imbued, or once they're kind of embedded with the ledger, we want to kind of outsource some of that vaulting to a kind of not a quasi bank, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A legitimate destination, because we don't want to take on that responsibility. I don't feel it is our responsibility, but we need to be able to partner with something like that. So just yeah, like we've got so many questions around this.
I would start by saying that Dublin and Ireland overall, it's not the most crypto friendly location at the moment, and there is still a lot of moving parts. So it would not be my first impulse to start having a Web3 project in Ireland. It's not that it's impossible or that would kill your project. It's just that I think you have way better jurisdictions to start doing that. And if you want to have some sort of legal security over it, you can even go to jurisdictions that already have a digital asset license. So you already be licensed, so that will already give a lot of peace of mind for your users or shareholders or even for the founders. Having this in mind, most countries take a while for the digital asset license to be actually issued. So we also have countries that some already have some kind of digital assets regulation, but it doesn't need a license. Or sometimes we can even go around the countries that have a license to see if your product would fit as a non-licensed product. Dublin also have kind of a heavy taxation, so you also have this aspect. You have countries with better taxations. What you could study on doing is, since you already have a company in Dublin, in Ireland, you could keep your IP and trademark in this company and use this company more as a holding company, because you don't want to mix much Web3 with other business, because it's a bit more risky. So if you're not open source, so if you have a trademark, I would always advise for you to put that in a separate company than a company that's actually developing or issuing tokens. So I think that could be your first step of thought right there.
Perfect. That sounds great, Weeza. I'd love to pick your brains more. But yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Someone else have any any doubts or any use cases that want to comment in the session?
Hi, I have a question related to how we're thinking about interacting with various stakeholders within our project. Jess Simone says and I are working on Sound Revolver Creator DAO. So our idea is, I guess by way of context, is like helping creators build their presence in Web3. We're kind of like a Web3 creators agency, but at the same time, like reducing a lot of like the infrastructure or like the overhead that are traditionally in place for the artists. I guess the area that I have question about is if we work with various creators and artists, and we're helping them like manage like a creator token, that I think like we're gonna have like a Sound Revolver token, but then the artists and creators that we work with will also have a token, whether it's like using our token or like a sub token. Should we also think about the legal structure of the artists that we work with as well? Or do we need to be, actually, yeah, do we need to be concerned about that? Like, do we need to suggest like, hey, like if you work with us and we're working with tokens, like we suggest you, you know, also create like another legal entity or what have you? Does, sorry, does that make sense? Sorry, I guess I'm
A bit.
that question. Okay.
A bit. So, for what I understood, you want to know if the artist that you work with, so if you would have any liability or if you should be concerned, or if even you should advise them to do what they need to do. Is that it?
Right. Yeah, yeah, because I understand. Well, sorry. When I say understand, I meant like I guess at the high level, like what we should be doing, and obviously, like we're still considering like how that's shaped. But like yeah, I was just wondering like, do we need to be concerned or at least sort of like suggest the setup on their side as well?
And your project itself, you guys are working somewhat at DAO structure. Is that it?
We want to be. I mean, right now, like we're sort of like in the formation stage, but yeah.
Okay. First thing that you need to understand then about your project is how your project itself will work as a DAO. You have an incorporated DAO, so you actually exist in the legal world too, in a country. So, and then which country? That's the first thing. And second, if you're not going to have any kind of legal wrapper and you're just going to be a pure DAO in Web3. Why is that important? Because that's what's going to limit the liability of whoever is inside that DAO and whoever is the manager or founders of that DAO. Nowadays, I mean, up to today, so we don't have any use cases of non-incorporated DAOs being sued or pursued by any legal courts for us to know the extent of the liability that could be applicable, or even how traceable that is for legal courts. So it's still a risky business in the sense that we don't know what legal applications that could have. In fact, worry us if you have a legal wrapper, if you actually incorporate it out, we can limitate very clear the risks and the responsibility of whoever is part or founding that DAO. So that's the first step. Once you talk about users that interact, we need to understand how they're going to interact with your structure. Are they just going to collaborate? Are they just going to create a token NFT or whatever and put in your DAO as an open space, or they're going to collaborate, they're going to be part of the structure. Because depending on how they will integrate or collaborate with the DAO, that will increase or decrease the liability of the DAO towards that artist, or of the whole collective towards people that are working from the outside and seeing that DAO. So let's say that if the artist is actually inside the DAO and actually a collaborator, that could generate liability to the DAO itself if someone have a problem with that specific artist or matter or NFT that he did or collaborated with the DAO. So it's how they're going to interact with it that might create more or less liability. But then if the artists have a company and that company interacts with the DAO, so it's not part of it, it's more of an interaction, it's more a quid pro quo kind of relationship, then for the artist, it's also good to have a company in the sense that they will have also a more limited liability for the projects that he or they are creating. Whereas if they collaborate and do everything on their physical person, there is also always a risk of him being personally liable for whatever problem it might arise from that. I don't know if that answered your question or gave you any light on it.
Yeah, because I think like you emphasize the like understanding the clear interaction between the two parties and even within like what the interactions look like. I guess from the sounds of it, also perhaps like based on like your last answer and this question, like maybe I guess it sounds like one is to like of course like make sure like the artist that we work with like has their own like company to like limit personal liability, but maybe if maybe I'm drawing connections maybe but like from the last question it also sounds like maybe to suggest for the artists like if they don't have one already or even if they have one to possibly create a web3 version a company that's like more friendly I guess or sorry separate from like their web2 business like if they already have one it sounds like maybe it's a suggestion
That's
right?
a business decision. Yeah, that's a business decision more than anything else. But depends on what they're doing and what to do. But again,
Right. Okay.
ends up being a personal decision and how much they want to be exposed to risk or not, or how risky they think their activity is. Because you can work in your personal name. I know a lot of Web3 artists that work in their personal names because they're just selling art. They're dealing with art NFTs. But then I also know a lot of people that are doing development. They're doing gaming developments. They're issuing tokens. I would never recommend to anyone issue tokens in their personal name. That's a very risky activity. You want to have some kind of limitation on your liability on that. So you also have to understand what they're doing. But creating a company can be really good for the limitation part, but it can also be a bit of a nightmare in corporation and taxes. So it's a real business decision, but both sides have pros and cons. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we have some more people here who joined. Pauline and Taco, so good to see you. Do you girls have questions around legalities for setting up? Or I know you're being super busy these days, no? How?
Hey, thank you. I actually, I do have some specific questions, but they're kind of related more to a specific country, I guess. So I'm not sure if there will be an answer if I ask them.
What country? I can see if I would be able to help.
In Georgia, that is in Europe.
Well, I an okay knowledge of Georgia. Is not one of my best jurisdictions, I must admit, but maybe if it's related to what the contracts, it's related to the business structure, taxes.
It's related to taxes. I'm still going through consultations with people here, but I'm kind of like exception. Like our project is an exception as a like Web3 company from the core, and that's kind of like people are struggling to help us. So, like our questions will be like because we want to incorporate our company here. We have questions regarding how we should like how we should deal with this legal side of being a company that gets income in crypto and opening the bank accounts, and then like how should we regulate their income like when it comes to our crypto wallet, like do have some of the knowledge like from the advices that we have, but still maybe you have some advices like how we should approach this and just like a general first.
Yeah, taxes is a very specific matter, but I have a good contact in Georgia of a lawyer there. I can, well, ask him and then get back to you if he can give me some light on it.
Yeah, that would be great. Can I ask who that person, if I know that person?
Yeah, I mean, he works with, what's the law firm? Just a sec. I don't know on the top of my mind where he's working right now. It's God. Let me just. Yeah, so his name is, it's two people. It's Jan and Piotr. They are also international lawyers, and they are working at Melbourne. It's Melbourne Tax and Law. It's an international law firm.
Okay, Melbourne. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you.
You're welcome.
But in general, I guess it's an interesting question because in a Web3, a lot of people get salaries.
Yeah. But then depends on country by country. For example, Portugal, it's actually a good and bad example. So if you receive a salary here in Portugal, first, if you receive through your company, will be taxed as normal corporate taxes. So once there's profit, you'll be taxed over profits. If you receive on your personal self, will depend. So if it's your main source of income, you will be taxed as any other income. So you'll see if you're independent employer or if not, and then will be taxed according to the general taxation. But if it's not your main source of income, it will be exempt. Main source of income don't have to be the biggest income, it's just the most frequent one. So that's an analysis that have to be done in Portugal. Once you go to Spain, Spain is taxing this difference. Spain is taxing as regular income, but they don't have a way for you to declare that in your personal income tax. So a lot of times people are mainly not declaring, and there's no way for them to know that. So it's a lot of forced exemption because there's no way of declaration. But in theory, you will be taxed as normal income. So it really depends on country by country.
Yeah, that's actually a thing. Like let's say in Georgia, like the consultations that I had here with people, like one of the things that I was told, like the good thing in Georgia, like you can, for instance, pay people salaries even in crypto. But what you have to do, and that was like a question, like a very specific question that I had, like you have to identify like which are your wallets, like from where you pay people, and then when you pay your taxes, it's kind of like fixing like when exactly you what was the date and what was the rate of whatever the currency you use that day. And then when you pay taxes, you kind of like calculate how much you have to pay in taxes. But then there is another thing, like, you know, it comes to when you have your employees as Georgians. And in our case, actually, we don't have anyone in our team except myself in Georgia. And we have all the people like around the world. So it means that then if they provide some document that they're paying their taxes from their salaries in their country, then we can become exempt from paying this kind of taxes of the salaries of our employees. It still becomes a little complicated.
Yeah, but it is like that in still in every country, which is a bit unfortunate. But it's a lot of case by case because there is, I mean, exception of US and Canada that they have already some really more specific personal income tax on that. Most countries are still struggling and still building on top, and so there is a lot of variables. What is happening nowadays in the crypto world is the regulators, while they don't create a specific tax regulation, they're just trying to fit the Web3 in crypto payments in boxes that are already in existence. So they keep changing those tick boxes constantly, which it could be, it's normally a bit of a nightmare, but at the same point, at least they're giving us some light. But yeah, it's still very embryonic, let's say.
Awesome. Thanks, Luisa. So, do we have more questions from our community here? Startups. I can see a few internal people joined. Yeah. Guys, you still have 20 minutes. So it's your chance to ask questions. Simona, would you like to ask any question? She's just listening. Okay, no problem. If no one has questions, we can also finish early. This will be fine for me because I need a coffee. All right, guys, what do you think? Any more questions?
Yeah, sorry, I just arrived, so I just have a very fast question. It's more in terms of, maybe you answered this, but how have other lawyers that you know, like, how do they approach Web3? Like, do you have like friends that are not necessarily in Web3 and they ask you a lot of questions? Like, what is the legal view of Web3 for people that are outside of it?
Well, my lawyer friends that are outside of Web3, you can then separate into groups, people that don't care and think we are in a collective delirium and the Web3 is going to crash at any moment and inexist, not just cryptocurrencies, but all of the Web3, so gaming, blockchains, and all of that.
Sure.
And you have people that are like, okay, I would not invest in any of the currencies or even in art, but I believe that the blockchain technology is something that is going to stay. So that they don't believe that the Web3 is going to be as it is, but that the technology underneath it is something that is actually applicable. So they are interested, but not to a point to actually work with it. So it's kind of monitoring the market. But what is happening also is they already have, and most people have the idea that it's still an early market, but it's an early market for everyone. So it's the same. We lawyers and we as a legal community that's working with Web3, we have a bit more of responsibility, not just to educate the community, but also to help each other. So what I see is that my lawyer friends that are working in Web3, we have a kind of close community and we actually exchange ideas. We try to see how different authorities are treating different matters in different countries. So we have a really good network. Different than the traditional market. The traditional market, we have the sense that it's more each one for itself. It's a bit more free for all. While Web3 is more of a community, we want to help each other because we want the whole environment to actually thrive. It's not so particular. So it's more of a sharing knowledge than anything else. And then depends on the country. We'll have different approaches because since different countries are also in different levels of maturity, you have people like me that I work more in an international context, but I need hands on the ground. So I need also lawyers that are very good in each of their jurisdictions in case I need support so I can count on them. So we have those different profiles of lawyers entering Web3. But most of the lawyers that are now in Web3, they came from either contract or corporate / tax background because it's the areas that have the biggest demand.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Okay.
How hard it is to find a good lawyer who's good in Web3 these days and who's not gonna charge like a lot of money because.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I struggle myself because, for example, this week I'm trying to hire a lawyer to help me out with Latin American, and it's actually pretty hard because it's a close community still, unfortunately. So we know each other, and every Web3 lawyer ends up knowing a person that knows this person, so we all end up at some extent knowing each other. And it's quite hard because the really, really good lawyers, they're already in a good place and they're being really, really well paid. So it's hard. And then we have the new lawyers that you have to be, as any other profession, honestly, it's not specifically to lawyers. So you kind of have to train them to enter a bit more in the space. So they are more like, they're good traditional lawyers, but they are not fully in the space yet. So you gotta kind of train them. And we have the young people entering the market now. So we're trying to bring them to this side. But as for people in the market, I would say if you don't want to be overcharged, honestly, try to find either legal law firms that are writing Web3 or like Web3 startups. And we have a couple of those, like legal Web3 startups that have close links to law firms. Why? I can give an example of QB, but I can give also other examples like Otoko, Autonomous, Polkadot. They're also some extent legal startups that work with different markets. Polkadot works creating legal wrappers for DAOs, and Otoko tried to create on-chain LLC series in Wyoming and Delaware. So you have a lot of those, not a lot, but you have like at least a handful of legal startups, and they have normally really good contact with legal law firms, and we can get a differentiated price because we know how we have to negotiate and we know exactly the extent of work that will actually entails. So it's easier to get a more fair price. When I'm consulting with QB and we need to do incorporation in whatever country, we have close contact with local lawyers and we know exactly up to what point that they can charge or how big is actually the workload. Whereas if you hire directly a legal law firm, they are normally going to charge by the hour. And they will also include on those hours that they are charging you study hours because most of the times they will not know what is the matter. So they will have to study and they are not going to study for free. So that's why normally the legal fees gets even bigger. So my advice would be either find a law firm that's already have a crypto department or is already specialized in Web3, because then they will not charge you for their internal study. They would charge you just for the service itself, or to find Web3 startups that's linked to legal. So because normally they can get better pricing on those.
Yeah, it was a similar situation with Web2 world as well, because lots of legal firms were not familiar with technology, but yeah, it only in Europe it only became super kind of mainstream when a lot of success happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, like legal firms started to see that there is money in this space, so they kind of started to open tech departments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And before that, as we all know, and I can speak as a lawyer myself, I don't think it's right, but instead of taking, imagine like in practical words for you to do, for example, a tax study of an immigrant. You know exactly how many hours you take based on nationality, what's the country, what is the assets. So it's easy for a lawyer that's specialized in that to actually measure how many hours they're going to spend in that case, how much is their hours, so they're able to give an okay fee. Let's say that once you reach Web3 and you want to do the same tax study, they don't have any idea of it. So they cannot measure how many hours they will spend to do the same reports, because they will have to study. And they're not going to study for free, because they could be picking a client in the hours that they are studying for that case. So what do? They bill for the 30 hours. So they'll measure, okay, I'll need 8 hours of study to be able to figure this out. So they include that in the legal fee. That's why it gets overly expensive. Otherwise, they will be picking other clients that they don't need to study and getting the same amount. So that's the idea behind, especially with big law firms and traditional ones.
Nice. So we have some more people joined us recently. I think Nick was trying to ask a question. Well, otherwise, anyone else want to ask a question? A comment? A struggle? Perhaps?
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me? So we're having trouble
Yes,
with my
I can
headphones.
hear you. Woo. Woo.
Oh, yay, celebrate. Yeah, so I'm a bit late for this. I mean, yeah, I think I've just caught the end, which it sounds like if you're going to work with lawyers and get quotes, go and work with lawyers that have already been working in the Web3 space, because you're going to get a realistic price. The question is how, like at what point, and maybe using a financial guide as an indicator that you should get lawyers involved, because they are expensive. You know, when you're when you've got 500 grand, and I'm talking in millions of dollars, that's the point. If you're still just a scrappy startup, and you're sort of if you're running on the funds of the founder's personal investment, so maybe you've got less than 100 grand. Yeah, at which point do you engage lawyers? And also is there a possibility where you are there law firms that will have a preliminary discussion with you in the hope that if things take off, you'll then hire them and they can kind of give you a little bit of advice. I worked in the music industry for years, and that was a pretty common thing for bands and artists. They would get that sort of not hours and hours, but they would have like one initial kind of meeting, and then they would ask the occasional kind of email for guidance. So that was kind of my questions around that.
So let's go with points then. What time you should engage a lawyer before problems are created. Why? Because if you reach them with already a problem in place, it will be more expensive, because they will have to either fix what was done before or figure it out what it was done to then try to fix it. So more billable hours. When you should engage, I think that the earlier you at least have someone, you don't have to be paying them billable hours just to be there. But as soon as have someone on board with it, or at least someone to advise your structure itself, in the long run, you will save money. So, as I said before, for example, one of the startups that I consult with, they do exactly that. So they will give you a plan like, okay, incorporate your company A, B, and C. You don't have to incorporate all in the same place. Incorporate as your business progress. And that's something that you always have to be in mind. If you're going to actually have a company, you don't have to do everything at once. Do it in your own pace. Do as the project develops. But have in mind already where you're going to go, where you're going to incorporate, what kind of legal assistance you will need. That will save you time and money. Then, as the project unfolds, you can actually start either incorporating or actually getting in touch with lawyers. Uh, and then about having a lawyer to advise you. That will depend on the profile of lawyer that you want to have. So if you're going to want a local lawyer for specific terms like labor and tax, you should already at least have a contact and leave them in standby in case you need them. Most of the lawyers, at least in Europe, they don't charge for a first call unless you try to get like super specific information. Otherwise, normally this first introductory call to have in mind the project, at least have a proposal in the background, they're normally not charged, and at least you can have someone in your background. If you're looking for more international lawyers, those normally work like, I can speak for myself and the law firm that we have here in Portugal. We can either normally have a couple of hours in the bank and then you use as you see please, or normally if you should try to have instead of hourly rates, as is very common in the US, trying to get close budget rates. So, for example, how much you charge to review NDA, or how much you charge to draft me a template of an NDA that I can use internationally. Once you have a close price, it's easier, especially for you to budget internally. And then you share the risk with the lawyer. If they take more time, it's their risk. If they take less time, it's on you. But at least you have a close budget on it. As for in-house lawyers, I think those are not needed until the point that you start reaching a more seed stage, so that you start having frequent or even growth. But once you start having frequent demands, by frequent, I mean more than 2 or 3 times a week, because that's the point that having external consultants will get overly expensive. And a lot of those you can do in-house, or at least you can start to do in-house and then just use external or local lawyers to validate whatever was thought in-house. I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I was just trying to unmute. Yeah, and just for clarification as well, when you say when you're coming up to incorporation, are you meaning, so in the UK, forming a limited liability company? Is that what you mean by incorporating, and,
Yeah.
and then obviously getting lawyers involved to say, okay, like this is your shareholders agreement, this is what happens if someone buy the other side out, and that was me.
Yeah, but again, for those, sometimes you don't need to have a solicitor in the UK. Shareholders agreements are more of an international and business contract. So solicitors are way more expensive than, let's say, a lawyer in Spain or in Italy or in Portugal. So also try to act smart. If you need, of course, a local lawyer for a local business, go for there. If not, you have international lawyers in jurisdictions that are cheaper hours, and they would do as good as a job for international matters as local lawyers or local solicitors. So it's a bit of business planning as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point, actually. Look around. Maybe there's someone in Lisbon.
Yeah, so for example, you need a solicitor to incorporate a company, yes, but do you need also to pay in pounds to do a shareholder agreement, or to do an NDA, or a SAFT, or a SAFE? No, all of those are international contracts. So you can find even sometimes better lawyers outside that will charge you way less. So, I mean, if you try to work incorporate in France, legal fees in France are astronomical. Their cost is also huge. So, of course, their legal fees will be way bigger than in Spain, for example, or Portugal. Or so, what? Why delegate international agreements to local lawyers if it's not needed? That's why I said have a good supporting network, have good international lawyers. They will be able to guide you through those as well. And whenever local lawyers are needed, they will signalize to you because they're not going to take extra responsibility if they don't need to. So for that, you need a local lawyer. They will signalize that to you, and that's the point that you look for a local lawyer.
We're still talking about
There's a great hot tip for today. Don't go local, go international and find places where the pound goes further. Thank you for that.
I have a question actually. Another question. When we're opening, me, I am in Georgia and Paulina is in the UK, so I need the documents from her, giving me rights to do all this stuff on our, on the behalf of her and
We
the whole
happy?
company. So what is there, when I reach out to the legal organizations, the department where you have to do this, they're always saying
How many people?
down whatever you need, but that's a question, what we have to include in the contracts to make sure that we're not making a double job, and then we need to create another contract where then she needs to send it to me and we have to again translate and do all this stuff. What has to be included in this company, and what is in general bare minimum of when we're incorporating our company, the startup. So it's kind of I think two questions.
Sorry, I think I didn't quite understand. So first part was regarding documentations for you to actually manage the company in another country. Is that it?
No, I'm saying that I'm in Georgia, and when I'm incorporating and I'm making the statement
Georgia.
that there is
Get a
two
Slav is
founders,
there.
and I'm here, but my co-founder is in the UK, so I need the documents from her to open the company and all the legal stuff, saying that she gives me the right to do it on her behalf, right? And I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's normally a simple power of attorney
Oh,
that
so,
will need
yeah.
to be notarized. They have to notarize the signature. That's no way around that. And her personal documentations. And then the personal documentation will change country by country, but the most common block of documents that you normally need is a copy of passport, proof of address, and proof of income. No, those are the most common ones. And a complete power of attorney, and then will depend also in how she wants you limited this. But normally you just say what's the name of the company that you want to incorporate, the business, and then you have to give all specific powers for the incorporation. And that changes by country. So if you need to have a fiscal residence number or not, if you have to have a VAT, so you have to give all specific powers. But normally the local lawyers should know that. It's a pretty standard power of attorney, so they should not be asking you this much what powers you want to include. It's normally full powers of incorporation of and management, or incorporation management and banking. So those are normally the three big typos. If you tell them that, they should know what you write in the power of attorney.
Perfect, thank you. I kind of forgot what was my second question, to be honest. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was really helpful. And if I'll remember and if we'll still have time, then I will ask.
It's a good idea. I think we are running out of time, unfortunately. Louisa was so kind to be with us just for 1 hour. But if you guys have more questions, I don't know if we can contact you, Louisa. Maybe what
Yeah.
is
Do you enjoy
best
the
way
music on the
to reach
background?
out, or
My new collection.
I
The new
mean,
foundation
I
playlist.
have my Discord here,
Oh,
so you guys can message me on Discord, or I can leave also. I can leave my email here also of my
How much data are you getting today?
from here, and then feel
Wow, a
free
lot of data.
to reach me, and yeah, for Portugal or international.
I have the best lawyer in Portugal, so you
Discord,
fuckers,
email, or
you know.
LinkedIn. Discord, I admit
Please.
that I sometimes take longer to respond. I always get back, but sometimes it can take longer. LinkedIn or email are normally the easiest way to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Luisa, and thank you for being in the community. That is awesome.
Absolutely. Whenever you guys need, yeah, feel free to reach out. If I can help, I would do so.
Thank you very much for all the information.
My loves, energy curation 101. I curate good energy.
We all
Okay.
thank you, Luisa. Have a
Energy curation. You know?